Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, Trump has come out and given a little bit of a message about the Doge finding about Social Security, which is that an egregious amount of people who are around 200 years old have been getting Social Security, apparently. We don't have any idea where that money's actually going because obviously those people aren't with us anymore. And this is just one of the small findings that Doge has found. So let's see what Trump had to say.
100 to 209 years old, 879 people. From 210 years old, I haven't met any of them. And if I did, I would bless them. I would worship the ground they walk on. 210 to 219 years, 866. From 220 years old to 229 years old, 1,039. And then you have two people, from 240 years old to 249 years old, one person. And there's one person that's 360 years old. That's just that. And then, where's the money being spent, right? Let's go into that for just a sec.
So he brings this up and he talks about mainly the people who are over 200. But if you look at this graph, which is the total number of people who are receiving Social Security, there's about 11 million people who are older than the oldest person who has ever lived. The oldest person alive today is 116. The oldest person to ever live is 122. If you just look at the numbers over 120, there's about 11 million people who are older than the oldest person who have ever lived who are somehow getting Social Security, which should be a little concerning to you for obvious reasons. Now, this brings up other questions more than just the waste here, which is what other government institutions, databases are just totally off? And we can kind of see this with the Medicare and Medicaid, the amount of money that was wasted there, which is how many people are getting this stuff that don't deserve it? Any of the entitlements, any of the welfare that either aren't alive anymore, aren't citizens, whatever. At the very least, those. And then also the people who just don't even qualify who are still getting it or whatnot, what have you. But to me, there's an even bigger concern than any of just the waste on this side, which is another government database that is probably even more important, which is who gets to vote, who has the right to vote, who is registered to vote, who's receiving ballots in the mail. Because you saw in this last election and previous elections, people have been claiming that they're getting ballots, mail-in ballots for deceased relatives. And somehow they're still in this database. And it's like, this is one of the major problems with the U.S. government right now is not only is everything suspicious, all of our systems are archaic. There really is no excuse that these systems should not be intertwined where when you're put on an obituary that you're taken off these systems. So you don't get your Social Security check after you're dead and you don't get a ballot that someone can fill out or cash the check for this money. Who knows what's going on with all this? But to me, this is inexcusable. We're a first world country. There's no reasons we should not have these systems in place that we don't even know. Millions, not just like a couple, but millions and millions of people who are clearly not with us anymore, and we just had no idea. To put it graciously, we'll say they just had no idea when probably they knew. That money's going somewhere. It's not just sitting in a bank vault somewhere. It's disappearing. We just have no idea where. But the voting is going to be a big issue because how do we know? How do we know who's registered to vote, who's actually a citizen? You saw in states all over the place like California, California actually is the worst, not only not requiring ID, but actually says you can't ask for it. This is something that needs to be taken care of because we can't have systems that are abused by people who are using the framework of somebody who doesn't exist anymore to capitalize for themselves. And talking about election integrity and them saying in 2020 it was the safest election ever. Well, now we know that none of these institutions are safe. None of them actually have any idea who's on it, who deserves to be on it, what's going on. So this is something that clearly needs to be looked at. And elections going forward, if you actually care about democracy, instead of just throwing that term out there. Like, if you actually care about who's allowed to vote, you should look into this. And we should probably have something where there's a solid database. I think federal voting laws should be federalized. I think that the states should not get to have individual laws for federal elections. I think that's fine for state elections. Do whatever you want. But for federal elections, all the laws should be exactly the same, because everybody's affected by who wins in a federal election. So it does not make sense that states get to have individual rules about who can vote or win or how, the mail-in voting, the whatever. All of that stuff should be uniform across the board. It's inexcusable that the federal voting system is not uniform. That doesn't make any sense. And then also that should be tied in with the states of these databases and whatever about who can vote and where and how, and getting them taken off when they can no longer vote, when they're not with us anymore. It's inexcusable. So we'll see what happens with this, because it's not only just finding out the waste, fraud, and abuse. It's actually going in and fixing these systems and preventing this from happening again in the future, which is a little bit of a tougher task, because you're going to need some congressional approval on this stuff. And I think that's going to be a lot harder than a lot of people imagine, to actually get this stuff pushed through clearly. We'll see how many of the Republicans are on board. Obviously, the Democrats oppose everything Trump does. Suddenly they'll say that, how dare you take 200-year-old people off the voting roll? How dare you take 200 people off of Social Security payments and whatnot? You're a monster. These 200-year-olds need their money. It's just ridiculous. But even as ridiculous as it is, there needs to be some legislation about this. And to do that, you need some level of agreement across the different branches to get this accomplished. Luckily, though, I think this is just common sense stuff that most Americans can agree with. They're sick of the Democrats dying on these hills that make no sense. Like, yeah, we love all the waste, fraud, and abuse. We need trillions more to just evaporate overnight. We need all these people to stay on Social Security payments who obviously are dead. You can't look behind the curtain. That's terrible. None of that makes sense. And I think people realize that this hill they're dying on is not good. I saw some people talking about, really, if the Democrats saying, if they want anything to be salvaged from the situation, it's like, you should get on the investigative team. You should be equally saying, okay, well, let's also go after this and let's navigate in this direction or that direction. Right now, you're just screaming outside the building. You're not participating. You're not saving any face, because you're saying that there's no problem. And everybody's looking at this and it's like, these are crazy problems. These are problems that you don't have in a first world country, which is one of the big problems with America. Is in a lot of ways, we have third world systems with a first world coat of paint. Our energy grid, our cities, a lot of the government bureaucracy. We have a lot of third world systems with a first world coat of paint. And that needs to be fixed, especially if we're going to compete with first world countries that are trying to attain a first world state, which is countries like Russia, China, who are actively trying to make their countries better, where we just try to handicap ourselves at every given possibility, every given opportunity. We try to screw ourselves over. So this is interesting. It's going to be far from the last revelation, I'm sure, but it's just something new every week. And the egregious nature of this should prove that there's something going on, even if there's only 2 people who are over 300. Okay, well, why were there 2 people allowed to be on there? Yeah, it's a small number in a country of 3 million, but it should say that there's a gap here in the system. Something isn't working as perfectly as it can be. So we should really look into this. And anybody saying we shouldn't look into this, we shouldn't try, at least maybe have a conversation about making the system better, is clearly in favor of there being a broken system. And the only reason you want a broken system is because you benefit from it. So that's my thoughts on this. If you made it all the way through the video, I appreciate it. If you like the content, like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And thank you for watching.